Welcome back, viewers, to part 2 of the Civic timing belt and water pump replacement video. In the last video we covered the removal of all that stuff. In this video we're going to put it all back together, and I assure you before this video is over it's all going to run just fine. But you don't want to hear me talking about it, you want to get to the action already in progress right now. Take it away, Eric. Here are the parts that I'm using. Now, I've already mentioned that I'm not so much of a fan of timing belt kits. I mean, big deal. You get a tensioner you probably don't need. What you really need are the drive belts. And I've never seen a timing belt kit come with drive belts yet. And mainly that's because there's different AC compressors and different components, so it's difficult to make a kit like that. But that said, never had a problem with these GMB water pumps. I've never had a problem with Dayco timing belts. I've changed regular intervals, so I'm fine with all these parts. I didn't necessarily have to go through the expensive Honda parts. However, if you want the best of the best of the best, put Honda parts on it and be done with it. Now, we will install our water pump. Always a good idea to at least do a visual on the new and old parts, just to make sure that they're similar before you go to stick it up on there and you're wondering why it doesn't fit or work. I'm sure somebody out there is going to say, Eric, you told me not to put any RTV on the gasket. How do you expect it to stay on there while you install it? That is an excellent question. Now, the Honda pumps, this is not an issue. Sometimes on these GMB pumps it is, but we'll try this today. There's these little indentations here on the water pump. See them? And they're there to hold this O-ring gasket in place. So place it the way it's supposed to be, as long as it's not, because if this starts rolling around, then you got a problem. Then you got to do something about it. But check this out. You just push it in, and those little things hold it in place. No RTV, none. Speaking of RTV, now this one really isn't that bad, but I've seen worse. I'm just going to take this scrubby pad and go along the mating surface of the water pump and clean up any debris or anything that might be there that we could get rid of now. Like I said, I've seen worse, and I'm happy they glued it to the water pump and not to the block. Then I would have been really salty. Like super salty, like Dead Sea salty. That looks good. Eric, there were 4 of the 10mm bolts with my water pump, and one of them is a different size. Well, you are correct, and you are observant. Good for you. Okay, there's 3 long and 1 short. The 3 long go here, here, and here. The short one goes down there. So short one goes here, the 3 long go all the other places. Long, long, and short. I'm going to take that 14mm that I took out earlier with this bracket. I'll pull that back, that upper alternator bracket, and insert that 14 in there now. And we'll tighten the fasteners. As far as torque, couldn't tell you. Never torqued them. But it's not much, so you don't want to break them off in the block. You just want them to be snugged up and seal. Have I ever had a problem? No. And I've done a lot of these. I go in a crisscross pattern just because that's what I do with parts. Done. And I'll snug up that 14. Water pump and cam seal are now installed, but you know, it's kind of messy, and I forgot to do something, and I'm sorry I missed this part. But before you remove the water pump, it's been a minute since I've done one of these, but before you remove the water pump, install the dipstick tube. Just put it down in the hole. It doesn't need to be in the correct position, but you feel it when it goes home. Just put that in there, that way no water gets down into the oil pan. Now I did mine slowly and I'm hoping that little to none got in there, but the oil is drained, so I can actually pop the drain plug off and see if there's any coolant down in there before I fill it up with oil. But before you remove the water pump, stick the dipstick tube down into here. That way you don't have to worry about coolant getting down into your oil. Dipstick tube installed. I'm going to clean the front of this engine area before I put this back together. I'm just going to use brake cleaner and a little bit of compressed air. While I'm at it, I'm just going to do a little bit of that same treatment to this inner fender, just to get rid of some of the goo that's piled up here. This is power steering fluid. I fixed it. I didn't go full trigger on that because I got the valve cover off and I don't want chunks of stuff getting down inside the engine, but I think that little bit was fine. I'm going to take the upper inner timing cover, put that back into place. Oh wait. Put it on correctly, Eric. There's just the one fastener, if you remember. Fastener bueno. Put my cam gear back on. But I'm not, I repeat, not gonna tighten this bolt until the belt is on. So I'm just gonna finger tighten it. Do not forget to tighten this bolt. By the way, there is one more timing mark that I can show you now. On some of these, but apparently not on this one. This little marker here will line up with a mark on that gear, but I'm not seeing it on this one. But I believe there's always the ones on the side, both on the front and the back. While I'm here, it feels like it's going to be easy to install the tensioner. Now there is a peg in the back that is supposed to go onto this. So make sure this gets onto that peg so that it can pivot properly. But that peg is up in the back, up underneath the water pump there. Or up near the, yeah, right up underneath the water pump. So make sure this gets onto that peg, and then the spring hooks into the front and on the dowel up there. So let's get started. You don't need to tighten this. It's going to need a little bit of movement in it anyway. You can hook the spring on it now. If you're wondering, there's two sides to the spring. One has a small hook and one has the large hook. The small hook goes to the tensioner, the large hook goes to the peg. Like that. Now that you're done getting stuff everywhere, you can take the dipstick back out. So we're first going to install the belt guide here, and there's a ridge on it. That ridge needs to face the block. If you put it on this way, it's going to not be good for the belt. So make sure you put it on this way so that that touches the back of the gear like that. So that goes on first. Then your crank gear, and it's keyed, so you can only get it on there one way. In fact, you might want to pull it out just a little bit so you can install your belt. So I just roughly put it in time. In other words, sort of wrap it around the water pump and like that, and get it up over the engine mount. But that's about as far as I go with it. All right. Just enough so I can get the cover on, the lower cover on. That's all I'm interested in at this point. There we are. Now, cannot forget a very important component. That's the crank sensor. And don't ask me how I know you can't forget it. Because it's a problem when you do. Let's just put it that way. It has a small peg, plastic peg that fits into a hole right below where the fastener goes. Has its own special fastener. Make sure that little rubber piece goes down into the engine block so I can hold the wire in place. Before you install the lower timing cover, remove this plastic plug and leave that open. That gives you access to the tensioner bolt, which you will need to get access to. Before I put this on, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I'll be right back. All right, I didn't go for perfect here, just, hey, looks like somebody did a timing belt. And I like to get that rubber seal back in there. But I come up through the bottom like this because my real goal is to make it so that the timing belt is sticking out at the top. That's the end game. And that's normally why I put this on from the bottom. For me, it makes it easier to line that up. You shouldn't have to force it at this. Make sure the gasket got in there. And then there's like a guide in the upper cover that it slides into. But when it's on, it's like it's already bolted down. If you're having to fight it, take it off, take another look, see what's causing the holdup, and then try again. Like I said, it should, like that, pretty much go into place, like it was always meant to be there. And reinstall my fasteners that I took out from underneath. There were 3, but sometimes I get happy and do that 4th. I think I might be feeling happy. You don't need to tighten these to the point where the timing belt cover breaks. They just need to hold a plastic cover on for fun's sake. That's all looking pretty good. Now let's put our crank pulley back on. Don't forget about our little key. That goes on first, and the little keyway there. Then make sure when you install the crank pulley that the keyway is pointing at 12 o'clock, so it should go over there. There we are. Crank bolt. Eric, what does the crank bolt get torqued to? Well, I don't know. Never had to worry about that. I've just tightened them down with an impact. So tighten it down, but you know, don't be a jerk about it. But at the same time, tighten it down. That should be good. One thing we're gonna do real quick, before we go up, leave ourselves a little breadcrumb, and I'll show you what I mean. All right, I put my engine support in here because I'm gonna remove the two 14 millimeters that hold this guy in place. Now, I often see these things that are damaged. In fact, this one has a little bit of damage to it, but I don't worry about those so much on automatic transmissions. I don't really see too many issues because they still got this rubber around the outside that's still doing some work. If you want to replace it, yeah, go ahead. Now's the time. You just remove this fastener, take the two 14s off, drop it down far enough to slide it off and slide the new one on. Good on you for doing it. Anyway, we need to get the AC belt on because the AC belt goes around this whole thing, and I'll show you how to do that. We have 3 drive belts. We need to arrange them from shortest to longest. And we can read the numbers, but here's an archaic way of doing it. Definitely seems like the shortest. It also seems like the oldest. Geez, it's hard to believe this is a brand new belt, but okay, whatever. Shortest goes to the alternator. Now the 2 long ones will only be slightly different. So this one here is the longest. The longest belt is a power steering belt. The middle belt is the AC belt. It's the easiest way I know to figure this out. So shortest alternator, longest power steering, and the middle is the AC belt, and that's the one we're after right now. With the engine supported, I can take these two 14s out. By the way, it's a good idea to wear safety glasses when you're under something like this. I'm really serious now. Take your AC belt and just work it up. Well, wow, this one's more busted than I thought it was. But, I mean, there's only those little things holding it in place. It's really just this rubber outer part that I think matters. Like I said, I haven't had an issue. Reinstall it. And if it didn't come apart, then all you need to do is just pull it down enough to get the belt up, over, and around it. That's it. And the AC belt's the only one you got to worry about in that regard. I'm going to put this guy, my crank tool spinner with my 17mm socket on it, in the crankshaft. When we tighten the crank bolt, our mark's got a little bit out of alignment, but that's okay, because all we've got to do is just take the ratchet that we just put in here and just line it up. There, all better. Let's also verify that our cam marks are still lined up, which they are. This is the part where you better make sure you left that tensioner bolt loose down in there. There's two sides to a timing belt, according to me. There's a tension side and a slack side. This engine rotates counterclockwise, so the crankshaft is pulling on the belt on this side. So this would be technically the tension side. This side over on this side has the tensioner, goes to the water pump. It is the slack side. Always start from tension and go to slack. So I'm gonna pull this up here and just start feeding the teeth on one at a time on the front and just get those started, and then I'll pull up on the back and slide the belt on. Make sure that I've got tension on this side and my slack is on this side. Now let's recheck our timing marks. Looks like the crank moved a little bit, but it's not that big a deal. We'll just put it back into place like that. It didn't take much. Now we'll go around and check the cam. That one's still in time, and also that one's still in time. It still says up on the front. So cam is in time, everything is in time now. So this is what we're gonna do to set tension. We've got tension on the front and slack on the back. Everything is in time. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna rotate the engine, but we're gonna put our hand on the cam gear and apply pressure. We're doing that to increase resistance and put some tension on the belt. And we're gonna rotate just a few degrees forward, counterclockwise, while doing this. And we're gonna do it until we feel some nice tension back here. A little bit more. Once again, applying some resistance to that cam gear. All right, that feels really good. So about that much. Now we tighten the 14mm bolt for the tensioner. Go right through the front of the cover. Once again, I don't know the torque, but tighten it down. You can then take your plug that goes over the top of that bolt and install it. Seems today that's easier said than done. Yeah, definitely easier said than done today. Usually this takes like 4 seconds. Today, 4 hours. Yay! I'm gonna try a little silicone spray, see if that helps. That did help. Yeah. Stay. Don't forget the other 2 timing cover bolts. And don't forget something super important. What is it? Yeah, that's right. That cam gear. I did rotate backwards a little bit. I didn't like it. All right, still got good tension everywhere. We're good, and that is tight. Do not forget to tighten that. Don't ask me how I know. Now to reinstall the dipstick tube. And for that, I'm gonna add a little bit of oil to the seal before it's installed. And that will just slide into its home. Hey, don't mess with my light. Okay. You'll feel it hit home. Also, this ridge here will be down below like that. You can then install the holder. Take the hook, come in from behind, hook it in, and then once it's hooked in the back, pull it around until it's secure. Now for some drive belts, starting with the alternator. All right, I remove my crank tool or my ratchet and stuff. Yeah, don't start the engine with those attached. Now that the alternator is loose from its mouth, that 14 underneath that we first loosened was one of them, and then this 12 up top off the water pump was another one. I'll just take a pry bar and hopefully right up against the master cylinder it will move for me, but it's not wanting to do that. Feeling it might be frozen underneath. Maybe some penetrating oil and an attack from under the vehicle, maybe. Yeah, I think that's what we gotta do. As usual, it starts with penetrating oil. Sometimes these just get jammed up in here. There's more stuff to pry against underneath here, like the body. Wow. This one's on a whole new level of stuck. I'm not gonna waste your time by going through all this. I'm just gonna get it unstuck and I'll be back. Honestly, the penetrating oil soaked in and it didn't take all that much. I first pried it away from the block. And I'm doing the middle of this so as not to damage stuff. So, got it moving that way. Now you wanna bring it all the way in like that. And since we're under here, might as well just put the belt on. Remember, it was the shortest. There we are. Cool. I'll get it started from underneath here as far as setting the tension. It actually feels good there, and all I have to do is tighten that upper bolt. Yeah, that feels really good. So the fact that it's rusted into place kind of worked in my favor today. Okay, since it's been so kind and locked itself into place with tension, I'm going to show you how I do this otherwise. So I'll take my pry bar, stick it down in right behind the water pump, and use that as my lever to pry out on the alternator to get it into position and get set to tension. Then I'll come in with my wrench and tighten things up. It's a 12 millimeter if you don't recall. Nice. You might remember my AC tensioner being kind of cheesed up. As I said, you can take these bearings out, keep the pulley, everything's good. Just knock it out from this side, hammer the new one in, good to go. Last time I was at the salvage yard, I found a good one of these, and I'm glad I did because I need it now. This one's fine. See how it doesn't spin that much and there's no noise? It goes together like so. This piece goes through the back, the washer goes on the front, and then the nut. And all of this goes down into this. But before I put this, well, actually no. I'm gonna put this in there, and then I'm gonna run this all the way down. Then I'll install this and the belt, and then set tension on the belt by tightening this 10 millimeter right here. But first I wanna bring it all the way down so I can get the belt on. 2 12s hold it on. All the way down. It goes together just like I showed you on the bench. Make the nut snug, but not too snug. You want it to be able to move. Get the belt on. Make sure it's on there, make sure it rotates. Not too much tension, seriously, just enough. Because when you tighten that nut up, it's going to have even more tension. Leave it just a little bit slack. It'll be fine. Let's reinstall our upper timing cover. Reinstall our engine mount. Now the upper part of the mount, which it looks like we need to come up a little bit. Or maybe come down a little bit. The deep ones, there's two of them that are the same. They go on this part. Now you can take whatever engine support you had in there out. Last, but certainly not least, let's do the power steering. I did a little house cleaning on the reservoir. Now this other part could use probably a little more help. But I can do that after. I know you're not in there sideways. So I don't want to tighten it up yet. Just want to get it close. Yay. I'm going to put the belt on now. Here's something cool. So the back of this power steering pump has this square drive in it. It's for, yep, you guessed it, a breaker bar or equivalent. This fear, yeah, I'm gonna hit you. No, maybe not. So you just push it up into place. Not too much. Too much tension burns up stuff. I'll tighten the bolt. That feels good. Got my reservoir back. Silicone spray. Any rubber parts, it's like, for me, the perfect lubricant. Don't forget to tighten that 14 under the alternator. That's good deflection. Right about there. All that looks good. I can put our lower cover back in. All right, now let's install the valve cover. To do that, you need just a dab of, I use Honda Bond. in these corners. And I don't use much. About that much is perfect. Can carefully lower this onto here. Can use the spark plug wells as a guide. It knows where it lives. Yeah, my gloves have about had it, but it's a hot day and it'll take a minute before I can put on another pair of gloves. Since I'm so close to the finish line, I'm just gonna keep moving. I'm gonna start all these by hand. And that's why we start them by hand. All right, they're moving now. I hit a ground. This gun has a hand tighten feature. These are new wires that are borrowed off of another vehicle. They're Honda wires. I prefer Honda wires immensely over anything. In fact, if it has Honda wires on it, I recommend you do not, I repeat, do not replace them. I have yet to see a bad set of Honda wires despite the mileage. But if you have to go aftermarket, use NGK. I like to keep my wires neat and tidy. Can put the cruise control back in its home. Don't forget about that vacuum line that goes in here. And if you left that bolt in there, you'll thank yourself right now. Be like, thank you, self. I don't have to mess with that bolt down there. I am awesome. Don't leave this cable wrapped around this airbox. It'll start with a very high idle. Once again, you don't need to ask how I know that. Put some oil in it and some coolant. Made this out of a brake fluid bottle from long ago. Been using it for a while. Screws right in. Most Hondas. And some other brands as well. Experiment and try for yourself. I also have to remember to put power steering fluid in this. This takes 5W30. Always put in what the oil cap says to put in. This one doesn't have a bleeder, but that is okay. You don't really need it. Because we're going to bleed the air out of the cooling system. I'm post a link in the description of a video that details this work, but this is just meant to cover the timing belt stuff. Now is the part where you get to see me start it up, which it hasn't started in a while. Also, I just changed the fuel filter, so it might have to crank for a minute. I'm just going to prime it a couple of times. Hopefully fill up that fuel filter. No leaks, running smooth. Very smooth. I adjusted the valves also while I had the valve cover off. I'm not going to bleed the cooling system out now on camera. Like I said, I'll post a link in the description to a video I did about that. But I think we have a nice, smooth, happy engine right now. Honda parts makes them very happy. Here it is after the cooling system's been bled out. It's a little shaky, but quiet. And to me, it appears to be happy. I think the more it gets driven, the better it will be. No leaks. Always a good thing. No check engine light either. Also a good thing. I'll put a link in the description to a V manual that I did about this same job that's available on my website. I believe I used a later model Civic in that one. If you're interested, that link will be down in the description, along with additional videos including how to bleed the cooling system and valve adjustments, that kind of thing. I'll load the description up with information and links for you if you have other questions about this video. If you have automotive questions not related to this video, I ask that you head to EricTheCarGuy.com, also linked down in the description. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, all those things that help me make a living. I truly appreciate that. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.